Good evening. This is Trip on All Things Be Considered, where we discuss and analyze anything and everything. Well, we continue onward towards 2023 in an unprecedented and precarious economic situation. The topic of a lot of focus seems to be Black Friday, and I think a lot of people want to know just what's going on with this Black Friday situation. Because when you look up the news stories regarding the Black Friday sales, you can't help but get somewhat conflicting information. Because on the one hand, we're seeing a lot of stories in which brick and mortar stores are experiencing lower than expected in person turnout, especially considering that we're now living at a point where we have relatively low levels of COVID restrictions. Now, during the height of the COVID restrictions 2 years ago, I remember talking to people left and right talking about how they couldn't wait for these restrictions to ease up so that they could go shopping and go out back out into the world and more or less live out the old normal in the way they did before the pandemic began. Well, we seem to be at something resembling that point. I certainly wouldn't say that the pandemic has ended, and it's very difficult to say that as a person who very recently just recovered from his own COVID case. But we are at a point where, due to high vaccination rates and other factors, we are not living through the level of high restrictions that we were a couple of years ago. So you would expect the stores to be inundated with crowds as they were some years ago. Black Friday has always been a mega tradition in American retail where people came in, they saw what they liked, and they were willing to shove people out of the way in order to get to it and get that good price and get that big screen TV at a discount rate. Now, I'm not making any value judgments here as to whether or not that was a good thing. I've known plenty of people who have always hated the practice of going to sales and joining in on the madness of Black Friday, and I've known other people that they like the sales, they like being out there in the crowds. It is what it is. But I'm hearing, the news headlines, especially in my own area, about how it just isn't turning out to materialize quite the way it has in more recent years. I read some local news reports saying that the malls, the department stores have reported relatively low. I was about to say voter turnout. You can tell my mind is still in the midterm elections. Shopper turnout in comparison to what they were expecting. And then I search more news stories about the Black Friday sales reports, and I find news stories talking about apparent record sales in the online shopping world, and I'm still trying to put together just what, in fact, is going on. Now, is the health of the American consumer uh, better than what we might be thinking? Could it be that with the pandemic mass psychology still in our minds, because it really hasn't been very long, that some people are just electing to do most of their shopping online, and they don't want to go into the crowds. They don't want the hectic existence, which is the Walmart Black Friday experience, and they don't want to immerse themselves in that virus making factory that is any crowded store during these times. Could that be the case? Or is there something else going on? And I looked at a CNBC report that talked about the more than $9 billion generated from the online sales thus far. And I found something very, very interesting to me. And it talked about the substantial number of online shoppers that are using buy now, pay later options in order to buy non discretionary items and beat the high inflation that we've been plagued with over the last few months. Now, this is something of concern to me because maybe I'm missing something here, but is it a wise decision to go with buy now, pay later options in order to get retail goods because you're thinking you're beating inflation, but you're doing so at a time where the cost of borrowing is becoming borrowing's becoming more expensive. We can expect borrowing to be more expensive moving forward, thanks to the frightening tightening, as they call it. Does it seem like a wise idea to be extending credit in order to buy discretionary items with the purpose of beating inflation at a time when borrowing is becoming harder and harder to obtain? Is that a wise decision? Let alone the fact that people are doing it, though. Is this something that is going to benefit American consumers going into the future? Well, I just don't see how. I don't see the way in which this is going to benefit people going into borrowing money in order to beat inflation, to buy things that you arguably don't need. And this is in conjunction with a potentially failing housing market at a time where HELOC activity is reaching enormous levels, maybe even mirroring use levels close to that which we saw just before the 2007 to 2008 financial crisis. Doesn't sound like a very good situation when you get down to the brass tacks of it. Now, I took some notes here on from various headlines in the real estate situation. Now, leading up to is from USA Today. Home values appreciated during the red-hot pandemic market, boosting equity to 20 trillion, up from 16 trillion in 2021 and 12 trillion in 2012, according to a study by TransUnion. This is both good and bad for the housing industry, says Jeff Taylor, founder and manager at Memphis. I typed that wrong. Digital Risk and board member at the Mortgage Bankers Association. Same link. Homeowners who once considered selling their house and moving up are now firmly entrenched as they don't want to leave a 3% interest rate for 7% and are using their equity to put money back into home renovations or additions to give them what they need, he says. The good news is that from an origination standpoint, many lenders and banks have been able to quickly make the shift to HELOC products and keep people employed. Yes, and it is arguably helpful, but that is only up until the point where the economy makes a substantial change and the employment situation at the macroeconomic level makes a substantial change. And oh, we've never seen that happen before. We've never seen people get overburdened with debt related to their houses, and then the whole thing go belly up. We've never seen that before. I get why this is becoming something of a trend, and that is because you have millions of homeowners believing that the rise in home values is an, in, an indefinite trend in an indefinite direction. But we're seeing that it's very likely that that is not going to be the case. So again, we've got a situation in which the cost of borrowing is up. Retail giants appear to be in trouble. Even online retail giants appear to be in trouble. When you have Jeff Bezos basically implying that he's giving a lot of money to charity because more and more people are going to need it because they just decided to lay a shit ton of people off just before the holiday season. That says something, and it isn't good. When you have retail stores slashing the prices of numerous items, of which the prices were very recently going up and up and up and up, and then you have some 35% to 50% off on numerous sales, and you still have, and you're still not getting a substantial in-person shopping rate. That says something, and it isn't good. So what's it going to be going into 2020? Is big retail dead? I would have to say probably not, but they are going to have to change the way they do things going into the new year. They're going to have to change the way they they sell things up. They're going to have to change the way they manage inventories, and I think the inventories are going to swell in the coming months. And the post holiday, shall we say, downturn, both in the economy and in the public mass consciousness, is going to be pretty painful. And with that, we should probably be pretty happy that it is still the holiday season. This is Trip, All Things Be Considered, signing off.